Joining me now is Victorian Liberal MP, Bev McArthur. Bev, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to start with a very simple question. In your view, what went wrong?
We failed to enunciate what we really should be standing for. We're too afraid to put our head above the parapets, and we got knocked off.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, it was hard for people who are politically engaged to differentiate between the Liberals and Labor as far as policies went. It seemed the whole election strategy was to say we're not Dan Andrews, and I don't think that's ever going to get you elected. But there were double-digit swings against Labor in parts of the West and the North, but not enough for the Libs to win those seats. Meanwhile, we saw Liberals go backwards in places that you'd expect them to be reclaiming seats, like Box Hill, Bayswater and Ringwood. Why do you think in that east and south corridor you did so poorly?
It is really interesting, Rita, because out in country Victoria, Victorians rejected all the sort of teal operation and we resoundingly got elected, and the Nationals, as you know, took seats off independents. So that is really good and demonstrates that the country people really work out who's who in the zoo. It's hard to assess what actually went wrong in a seat like Box Hill because we had a fabulous candidate, and all the talk about needing women and culturally diverse people, we had the best female culturally diverse candidate you could find, and yet she lost to, you know, a very ordinary stale male Labor person. So it is difficult to assess that, but you know, I just want to say hats off to Jacinta Price today for ensuring that the federal Nationals are going to oppose the Voice. Now, in Victoria, of course, the state Nationals have been the lead proponents of the treaty. Yeah. And so I'm wondering whether Peter Walsh as the Shadow Minister, I mean, he may not be the Shadow Minister soon, who knows, but I'm wondering whether they're going to follow the lead of their federal counterparts and reject this ridiculous proposition as well.
Well, I live in hope, and I guess part of the hope is up to who the next leader of the Liberal Party is going to be. There's been a bunch of contenders: Ryan Smith, Richard Reardon, Brad. Who are you backing? There's I think up to 4 contenders now. Who do you think is best placed to form a real opposition to the Dan Andrews government?
Well, I'm very proud to say I'm backing Richard Reardon. He's a fantastic country MP, but also his electorate now covers the peri-urban sort of area of the communist state of the Surf Coast Shire, as I would describe it. And he's well and truly managed to counter those views there. And I think he understands exactly what's needed to make sure we excite the polity with arguments that we've always been able to muster, which are about the freedom of the individual, the rights of the individual to practice their religion or their faith or you know, and he's a businessman who ran a very successful small business and so understands what the business community need, especially the small business community, but also across his electorate, we have the most productive agriculture sector, the most productive manufacturing sector,
and Bev,
and then the urban areas.
And Bev, throughout the lockdown, he was one of the few Liberal MPs who actually was holding the Andrews government to account. And sadly, too many within the Liberal Party, including the leadership, were in lockstep with many of the restrictions, with many of the overreach and illiberal policies, but he was one who stood up for his community. So I'm hoping that he does well. Bev McArthur, thank you so much for joining me tonight.